Bible for the gospel reading, which comes from the 18th chapter of John. Then they took Jesus from Caiaphas to Pilate's headquarters. It was early in the morning. They themselves did not enter the headquarters so as to avoid ritual defilement and to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate went out to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" They answered, "If this man were not a criminal, we would not have handed him over to you." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and judge him according to your law." The Jews replied, "We are not permitted to put anyone to death." This was to fulfill what Jesus had said when he indicated the kind of death he was to die. Then Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate replied, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Pilate asked him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." Pilate asked him, "What is truth?" After he had said this, he went out to the Jews again and told them, "I find no case against him, but you have a custom that I release someone for you at the Passover. Do you want me to release for you the King of the Jews?" They shouted in reply, "Not this man, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a bandit.
Live in charity and steadfast love. Live in charity. God will dwell with you.
You may be seated. Our text this morning is directly followed from last week's text. And so last week we had the interrogation of Peter and Christ. We shift our location to Pilate and Christ and the religious leaders who hand him over. No one really wants to be at the table that's set before them in this particular text. The religious leaders would like to get back to Passover, but they have to hand Jesus over. Pilate, we don't know what he was doing, but is somehow interrupted by the religious leaders bringing Jesus before him to say, "Here you go." And then pretty sure Christ is like, "Why are we still here?" And yet Christ is present fully in all that he can be. And so we have these three parties in today's text. What's interesting to me is that Pilate seems to want to pass onus on anyone but himself. He is the one who can say whether somebody is imprisoned or executed by capital punishment. And so he goes to the religious leaders, "Why don't you handle this? This sounds very much like your problem, not mine. Please continue to see it through." And they go, "Well, you know we can't actually execute anyone, so we need you to do that." That's a big statement. And we just kind of gloss over it. Like, "Oh, sure, your religious laws don't allow you to execute people. Sure, that makes sense. Use the state." They wanted Christ dead. The religious leaders wanted Christ dead. And so they go to Pilate. And Pilate's like, all right, well, I'll go ask Jesus what he did. And he asks, and Christ is like, is this your doing? Really? And he was like, am I a Jew? Meaning, no, I did not. But I am here, so answer me. And Christ does his beautiful job of saying, if that is what you say, then I guess I am. But my kingdom, if you call me a king, is not of this world, it is of something else. And puts it back on Pilate. So Pilate goes back out to the religious leaders and says, hey, since we're keeping religious law by you being out here, you also have a religious law where you can release somebody at Passover and keep face, is basically what Pilate is offering here. And they say, no, we want Barabbas. Texts translate it in a variety of ways. Our text today said bandit, others have said terrorist. Barabbas was clearly, either way, not one without cause for punishment, potentially. But that is who they released. I wouldn't want to be at this table either. No one's having fun. And people are harming themselves. The religious leaders are in such a unique position that they have to remain outside, because if they go in, they will defile themselves by ritual law and then can't go return to Passover. That's a lot of navigating. And then Pilate, man, he clearly is like, I see no cause for this person to be executed. Let's release him. Nope, he makes a calculated judgment. Do I execute Christ or upset the religious leaders that we have a relationship with? Kind of navigating our culture together. One person's better than an uprising. I'll kill Christ. But even with that, in future scenes, we see Pilate wanting to be like, this ain't my doing, this is y'all's doing, and he washes his hands. He does not want to be in this space. Maybe he knew that it was really wrong. Maybe he just was like, this isn't my issue, and yet I have to see it through. But what's interesting, I think what we see here with Pilate is a case of moral injury. Moral injury isn't anything new, but research in the fields of social work and mental health in the last few years have coined the term moral injury. And it's usually around combat veterans who have to do certain things that go against their moral compass. And they come home and their soul has been wounded and they don't really know how to navigate that. And while it's been researched around veterans, other fields of mental health and well-being are starting to use it as a way of being able to explain some of the things that hurt us so deeply that they change our course of reality. Moral injury, by definition, is causing, witnessing, or not doing anything to stop something that goes against your moral or ethical code. That's a lot of things in our world. And I just want to acknowledge that all of us may, on big or small scales, experience moral injury. So why am I bringing this up? Last week I talked about our automatic nerve response systems. This week I'm talking about moral injury. I think because sometimes we need words to explain what goes on internally. And sometimes we don't have them. And so for me, when I learned of moral injury, I realized that some of those moments where I feel like I can't make sense of what just happened, or I can't seem to grapple with the fact that I act one way but my beliefs are another, and I'm trying to find a way forward, that research like moral injury helps me understand how people, including myself, can make the choices that we make. Pilate, I think, experienced ongoing moral injury by having to deem whether somebody lives or dies. I genuinely believe that we were created for love and justice. And anytime we don't get to live into that truth of love and justice, we cause harm to ourselves and others. Maybe not on the scale of Pilate, and I don't mean to compare any of us to Pilate, for I pray most, if not all of us, have never been in the position of having to choose whether somebody lives or dies. But there are those in our society who do. And on a small scale, sometimes it's that we have to make choices that feel very calculated, like Pilate's. How do we navigate this world? How do we explain the choices we made? And sometimes we're left with a couple options. My guess is Pilate created and started to add the value of capital punishment being justice. And he had to be able to live and function in his role in the world. So he adjusted his values. We may do that from time to time in different ways. We may have once believed something and then over time had to make choices that go against that. And instead of figuring out how to grapple with it, we just add that into our values. Another choice might be that we just feel disjointed, that something isn't aligned within us and we don't know how to make sense of it. And so we hope that it gets easier or that it gets figured out, and we just keep living. Maybe you're like me sometimes and you just pretend it doesn't happen, right? I didn't make that choice, I'm really fine, everything's gonna be okay, and you keep on going, knowing full well that you are making choices that don't align with your values or your ethics. And then once you come into awareness, you start to maybe another option is heal. Tend to those soul wounds, as they're called. Pilate, at least as far as we know, never did. He never got that chance. But Christ is one who always invites us into abundant and transformed life. I think that's what we get every single day, multiple moments throughout the day. We are not the limitations of our choices. No matter how grave they may feel, if you ever feel like you have a Pilate moment, I need you to know that you're not that choice alone. If you make smaller ones too, probably more of us are in that field, you are not those choices alone either. And while those choices can harm or hurt our souls, and we have to figure out how to navigate that, we are still the beloved. And I offer this morning in part because I think sometimes we need to know that when we say God forgives, we genuinely mean it. God is one of love. In a way, like, I love my kids. Do you see how cute my kid is? The other one's in the nursery. She's cute too. And I love them something fierce. It's stupid. They take my sleep, they take my time, and I'm like, have it all. Not really. I'm like, please, God, just sleep later. But my love for them is still unlike anything I've experienced. And if I love those tiny little humans that much, even when they make choices like toddlerhood, what is happening? So many things. Why do you... I can't make your pants longer because your pants are shorts and that's not how clothes work. I don't get it. And there's times where I want to be like, make different choices. And I tell them that, in particular my eldest. And if that's how I love, all muckety-mucked because I'm muckety-mucked and messy and confused as a human, how much more does God love you? So much so that there is genuinely nothing, I don't understand how, but there is nothing that can make you not the beloved. Nothing. It kind of annoys me about God, if I'm totally honest. I'd like some people not to be the beloved anymore because I am a person who wants justice on my terms, not God's. So if I'm being honest, I don't want Pilate or the religious leaders to still be the beloveds in this text. Good thing I'm not God. On so many levels, right? But God loves so much, that God wanted us to have salvation, healing, wholeness in the here and now. I don't know what happens when we die, but I'm pretty sure God has that figured out. So when I talk about salvation and healing, I'm talking about that living, breathing, healing, fleshy healing now. And our world has a lot of pain that causes our souls to be wounded. It causes some things and choices to be made that we can't imagine having ever made. And yet, we get to heal. We get to be empowered by that love that allows us to trust that we are worth that healing. That we, hear this, are worth forgiveness. So even when you can't maybe forgive yourself for a choice you made, because I don't know if Pilate ever did, but there are some choices we make that are hard for us to live with. We keep them in the dark. We keep them so quiet and private and shut down that we don't even get the chance for forgiveness to penetrate that. We don't even get our souls to be mended and healed because we don't believe we're worthy of it. And if I'm being honest, that healing work is really uncomfortable and painful in and of its own. So I get not wanting to go there. And yet, Christ presents with us, even as he is being given his final chance to get out of execution, he says, I am the truth. And the truth is God is love, and that you are the beloved. You're worth that healing. You're worth that forgiveness. You're worth living into your wholeness. The world is hard, and it can feel like we are just constantly in a state of difficult choice after difficult choice after difficult choice. And that's just on a societal level, not on the individual, where some of us have jobs or careers that add difficult choices onto already those difficult things. That's a lot. And I think what Christ does here is say, I can't lie about who I am. Because if he did, I think that would have wounded his own soul. Even if it meant not being executed, which to me, I'm not sure I would have made the same choice. But Christ lived so fully and so beautifully and so full of integrity that even in the moment where he could have maybe gotten out of execution, he held steadfast to the truth that God is love and we were made for justice. Not justice of this world, but justice of being whole and seeing the beloved in each other. And so for us today, as we enter these final weeks of Lent, we have one more Sunday before we journey to Christ on Palm Sunday as he enters the city once again to explore the tables that are set before us, And throughout a day, you can have many tables metaphorically set before you, sometimes literally too, that you don't want to be at. Instead of maybe critiquing yourself for not wanting to be there, maybe take a posture of curiosity. Why don't I want to be there? Is it the people? Is it the experience? And if it's a literal place, maybe it's the food. But maybe be gentle with yourselves and add a bit more of curiosity. Why do you choose the way you choose? Why do you think the way you think? And not from a place of judgment. There's enough of that. And by judgment, I mean the negative critiquing judgment, not the, you look good. That's a nice judgment. But the ones internally where we go, oh, that's awful. Why would they do that? Or why did I do that? Instead of that negative judgment, maybe take the posture of a God who loves you, who says, make a different choice. Or, oh, well, that was a choice you made. What's happening there? Why did that happen? How can we help you make a different one next time? Christ was a teacher. We're disciples. At least that's what we proclaim. Which means that we continue to learn and grow and explore. So whether you can identify with moral injury or not, that's not the focus today. I offer it in hopes that if you do, it might give you some language to begin some healing. But more than that, I hope that we can see that even when we don't want to be at tables that we are at, we are met by a Christ who is ever present, who sees us for who we fully are, and always invites us to make choices that are life-giving. He extended that very thing to Pilate. Pilate couldn't receive it. Sometimes we can receive it, and sometimes we can't. And I hope that we can be gracious to ourselves when we can't. You, beautiful, complicated, fantastic, amazing human beings, be curious about why you do what you do. Because I'm pretty sure curiosity leads to more learning and more love. More so than critique or anger will ever do. God looks at you and says, you're my beloved. You get to choose differently if you didn't choose how you needed to this time. Because we truly do worship a God that wishes abundant life for us in the here and now. So if there's anything keeping you from that abundant life, of being well, of healing, I invite you to take a humble posture of curiosity about yourselves and about those around you. A couple weeks ago, even Pastor Ann brought it up when it comes to things so complex as war. Maybe if we had a bit of humble curiosity about things, we would have a bit more empathy. Empathy for ourselves and those around us. But if you ever question if you are worthy of this, if you are worthy of love and forgiveness, hear this again and again and again. You are. For no other reason than you are the beloved. May you go forth into this week having curiosity about that belovedness, resting in it, leaning into it, and embracing it. I give thanks for the ways that you teach me how I am the beloved and how I get to choose differently next time. Thank you for being my teachers. You are the embodiment of God's love to me.